So, in the last class we have seen the surface tension, and we have also discussed the various measurement techniques, the denoising, the Willemy plate method, then the maximum bubble pressure method, drop weight method. All these methods are also applicable to interfacial tension. So, this current lecture we will start with interfacial tension. As I told you, surface tension relates to the gas liquid interface, while liquid liquid interface are usually dealt with interfacial tension. So, what are we going to study in the interfacial tension? We are going to study how the interfacial tension are actually calculated or predicted using some correlation, that is the Ricalco-Good correlation and Fox correlation. Then we will see how the contact angle and wetting actually looks like. We always talk about phenomena of liquid where you have a plane surface. So, most of the times in this case of interface you do not have a planar surface, it is a curved surface, it may be convex, it may be concave, okay, because there are certain aspects, for example, in capillaries where the liquid at the top is not at all at a planar surface, it is maybe curved. The meniscus has a important role to play, and it is these actually parts of instruments or this capillary, the properties are different than equilibrium thermodynamics. So, the boiling point also varies within the liquid which is inside the capillary. So, those things all will be taken up in the Young-Dupré equation. Then you have the shapes of surfaces. So, these next part, the third part, which will be covered in some part in this lecture and in the subsequent lecture, which deals with the mathematical aspects. Till now we have only seen the instrumental aspects, how to measure the surface tension. Now the mathematically how do you treat them? So, if you have such observation which is very frequent, those in chemical engineering they may be using, you actually measure surface tension or interfacial tension. So, those you require these expressions, radius of curvature, Young-Laplace equation. For example, the Young-Laplace equation we will study something like that, what is the pressure inside a bubble, if it is in a liquid or if it is in a gas. Then the Kelvin equation, what is the saturated vapor pressure for a liquid inside a pore or inside a capillary, how does it vary with respect to meniscus. All these are will be taught the next. In the measurement of interfacial tension, we will also describe another instrument in the later part of the lecture. It is called the spinning drop tensiometer for liquid liquid interfacial tension. Okay, so we will start. So, what is interfacial tension? A pair of immiscible liquids usually forms an interface. So, if you have liquid 1 and liquid 2, it will form an interface. The interface may be very thin in the order of nanometer, but it has an important role, because at these points the molecules are attached to the bulk as well as attached to the other liquid phase. The interfacial tension here is caused by the imbalance force experienced by molecules at the surface of separation. Here surface of separation, earlier it was gas liquid, now it is liquid liquid between two immiscible liquids. It may also be described, as I told you, it will concepts are similar to surface tension. Okay. There is the Antonov rules. What it says is that the actual interfacial tension lies within the difference between the surface tension of two liquids. So, it gives an approximate value. Okay. So, it means that if you mix the two liquid, let us say A and B here, if you are mixing these two liquid A and B here. So, the interfacial tension, that is gamma AB, is equal to the difference between gamma A and gamma B. So, it means that it's a modulus is given, because we engineers are usually interested in positive values. So, you give a mod or to that. So, the difference. So, we do not know which phase has more higher tensor or which one is more denser. I just drew it in the way you can help me in the representation. Okay. So, this is one approximate Antonov's rule. So, for example, where does it make a difference? For example, many of times in chemical engineering you actually deal with liquid liquid extraction. The separation, there is two liquid phases. So, what happens is, in one of the liquid phase we called it solvent rich phase, another liquid phase is called is the, let us say in this case, a solute rich phase. Okay. So, solute rich phase is usually called as the raffinate phase. The raffinate phase means which does not have any solute, less solute. Solvent phase is usually where the solute get extracted. So, in this case, let us say you have a solvent Here let us say you have a solvent, you have some complexing agent inside. Okay. This complexing agent, you know what it is, suppose you have a metal ion, this is a particular feed, okay, a feed solution. The feed solution, for example, it has some metal ion and you want to remove it, you want to extract it. I am assuming this particular phase is of lower density than solvent. So, what you do, solvent may not go inside and pick up this metal salt. What you do, you add some complexing agent which is soluble in the solvent. So, what it will do is that it will try to go into the interface, this complexing agent, this will also try to go into the interface, then they will the green ones which are the metal salt, they will cross that barrier, and get attached to the complexing agent. And then you keep on doing for a number of time, after a certain instant of time you will see most of them has been attached to the complexing agent. So, what happens? So, the metal ion moves from one phase to other phase, L1, let us suppose L1, this is L2. While it moves from L1 to L2, obviously from classical thermodynamics we know it will keep on moving until the chemical potential of that particular component is same in both the phases. But there is another driving force which is the interfacial tension, this interfacial tension. Now, if it is less, it is better. So, because it needs to go through the interface, so it needs to create a separate area so as to pass through. So, that area obviously amount of energy you require or a work done you require is directly proportional to the value of the interfacial tension. So, you need these values, that is why, to perform any extraction. So, as I said, there are two phases, immiscible water phase and sulphate phase. We assume that the aqueous solvent has metals. So, now you want to take it down to the solvent phase. So, that is what it is, you stir it, some part goes through, and in the final stage the two phases settle with the aqueous rich phase and the solvent rich phase. Now, it never happens these two will mix, because say water and with solvent, the solvent is hydrophobic, it will never mix. So, it should have a higher interfacial tension, but at the same time it should not be so high that nothing comes and crosses the barrier. So, that is what you require a interfacial tension. Then there are some correlations such as the Grifalco and Good correlation. They have presented the following equation, the equation is here, for interfacial tension taking into account the effects of the cohesion free energy of the two phases and the adhesion free energy. So, cohesion and adhesion, you know, cohesion is repelling, adhesion is together. So, it is something like this expression, gamma AB is equal to gamma A plus gamma B minus 2 times of phi into gamma A gamma B, and this phi is related to the free energies. So, what is this GAB and ACC? This is the A simplifies addition energy, C simplifies cohesion energy. So, it means that the interface GA, GB and GAB denotes the, so GAB it refers to the addition energies of the molecules A and B, and A represents the cohesive energy. So, it means like it is a mixture property, this delta G and this is a pure property. So, how close they are bonded and how strong they are repelled. So, the ratio with the negative sign gives you phi. This phi actually varies between 0.5 to 1.2 in a large number of liquid-liquid system. So, for unassociated systems, unassociated means where there is no hydrogen bonding or there is no dipole-dipole interaction, it is between 0.5 to 0.8, while for associated liquids it is greater. So, more the association within the liquids, higher is the value. Then this Fox is another one correlation. Fox suggested an enhanced Grifalco-Good correlation. He proposed a non-polar dispersive forces which should be handled differently from hydrogen bonding or metallic forces. So, what he says, instead of G he wrote this surface tension. So, this surface tension value are gamma A dispersive, gamma B dispersive. He believed that the immiscible liquids interact only through dispersive forces. The interfacial forces then is calculated using this expression. So, for non-polar liquids, when we do not have any association, you only have dispersive forces, this gamma will become gamma D. So, now if you put gamma is equal to gamma D in case of non-polar liquids, we can calculate unknown dispersive interfacial energies. To compute interfacial tension using the above equation, the interfacial tension between a highly polar liquid and a non-polar liquid is measured. So, it means if you keep A as highly non-polar, B you should keep a highly polar. More the difference, greater is the value. So, for non-polar hydrocarbons hence can be used for this purpose. So, these are some different values of interfacial tension when they are mixed in water, okay, when they are mixed in water at T equal to 298.15 Kelvin. So, if you mix equal volumes of water and this compound at this sample temperature, what is that interfacial tension? So, the interfacial tension of these inorganic liquids with water is given in the second column. Now, see, lesser the values, higher will be the solubility. Now, see, this hexanol is very low, aniline is low, alcohols are further low too. So, this it means that this isobutyl alcohol and water are miscible to a great extent. So, that is why their interfacial tension. So, the work required to create an interface is very less. So, it means very less. Now, you see hydrocarbons, see decane, heptane, these are very high values 51, 50. Now, correspondingly phi is also less. So, this I told you it is between 0.5 to 0.8 the non-polar compounds, see it is between 0.5 to 0.8, and those which are a polar compound it is higher, let us say isobutyl alcohol it is 1.15 or maybe chlorohexanol 1.04. So, or nitrobenzene some aromatic is there, then pentane it is very less, but your interfacial tension is more. So, it means that from these interfacial tension values you can say whether it will be soluble in water or not. So, these are very important aspects. So, if these two particles are assumed to be perfectly spherical, you know, suppose this is water and this is any organic liquid, okay. If you assume to be perfectly spherical, then you can compute phi using this relation. So, VA, VB has the molar volume of A and B, for example, this is A, this is B. So, just take the molar volume, calculate it, use it in this expression, you get the phi value, okay. So, this is another way of calculating, but the condition is they should be perfectly spherical. Now, the contact angle. What is the contact angle? Now, contact angle means suppose you drop a liquid, maybe a tiny drop of liquid onto a surface, what happens? It will try to spread out. When it tries to spread out, it does not do it evenly. The edge of the drops will meet the solid at an angle, okay. The contact angle thus for a liquid solid combination is defined as the angle between the tangent to the liquid surface at the point of contact and the solid surface inside the liquid, okay. It is highly dependent on the composition of the liquid or solid and ranges from 0 to pi radians. Now, for example, we have three cases. So, you know this is what? Contact angle less than 90 degree, contact angle greater than 90 degree. So, it means if the liquid drop is something like this, you draw a tangent something with this manner. So, this angle is always theta and this is called the contact angle. So, it means the contact angle is less than 90. So, it is, you know, it is can say a bit of hydrophilic. So, it tries to stay or it attracts to the surface. Now, see this area when it is comparatively spread out, here it is not spread out, it is somewhat oblique. So, it means if you draw an angle like this, so it is theta. So, this is theta greater than pi by 2. So, it is hydrophobic surface, fine. So, if you draw a energy balance, so surface tension, let us say this one, because here you have air, here you have liquid and here you have solid. So, it means the air to solid surface tension is here, liquid to solid is somewhere here acting, and one with air to liquid is somewhat here acting. Okay. So, there are three different surface tension now applicable. One is through the air solid, air liquid. So, let us see how we compute these values. So, before that let us see what do you mean by different this theta less than equal to 0, theta less than 90 to 150, all this. For example, if you see in this case you know this one, if this is the surface, it is called super hydrophilic, means it will just be a thin film liquid. So, it means if I want to draw an angle you know this particular angle, this theta is almost equal to 0. So, this is called superhydrophilic. Hydrophilic means something which is less than 90. Okay, so what is hydrophilic? Something like this. If I draw the surface, this is a solid surface. So it is something like this. The drop is like this. Okay, so it means if I draw an angle like this, so this is theta. So this theta is almost close to less than 90 in this curve. Hydrophilic. Another one is hydrophobic. Here also same thing phenomena occurs. So what you have is something oblique formation. So in this oblique formation you draw that angle. So this theta is equivalent to between 90 to 150. So this is called hydrophobic droplet. And again in the final if you have the superhydrophobic. Now superhydrophobic droplet is very important because you know suppose some oil this you want to repel out the oil, which oil oil water spilling is there. So you need to take out the oil from the ocean where it has spilled off. So you need superhydrophobic surfaces in that cases. So for that so that it goes the oil goes into those surface, it just cleans up the water. In this case you just it is like just make it a drop like this. It may be in the touch only in this region. So theta will always be greater than 150. So this angle is 1 theta which is equal to 150. So these are actually depends or the different various scenarios where you have the contact angle with water and the solid surfaces. It depends upon our application whether we want the hydrophilic or hydrophobic. As superhydrophobic applications I told you in the case of oil water cleaning. Okay. So this is one aspect which you should actually understand. So based on the earlier expression which I was discussing, the air solid surface tension, liquid solid and air liquid, you do a mass balance. So what it is, at equilibrium the thermodynamic forces between the three phases, namely air, liquid and solid, is balanced. Okay. Suppose the drop is on the surface, so we say that air, liquid and the solid surface is at equilibrium. If they are at equilibrium, the energies and the associated forces will also be balanced. So if you write down this AL, AS, LS are the components of the interfacial energies between air liquid, air solid and liquid solid and do a mass balance. So gamma AS, so whatever you have this is equivalent to gamma LS plus the cos contribution of gamma AL this. So it means that cos theta I can write down with this expression. So if you know these values you can find out contact angle. So as I told you in the earlier slide, if theta is less than 92 it is a hydrophilic surface, usually theta greater than 90 it is a hydrophobic surface. If a liquid other than air is present, the contact angle is obviously determined similarly. Fine. Now to understand these droplets, one is the contact angle. The second important aspects is your radius of curvature. Radius of curvature is very important because this will help us to assign what is a surface. Is it convex? Is it concave? And if it is within the pore, what is the meniscus like? So that is why you require to define mathematically what is the radius of curvature. We will use two different techniques. The first techniques I have shown you here, you have the axis z axis and this is x axis. Let us say this is an arbitrary curve, this curve extends here, it is a curve let us say f of you can function f of zx, z comma x. Okay. So at this point if you draw a tangent at this particular point P and then you try to draw a circle which is just touching on a particular point on the tangent. So that radius will be RC and AB at the center of the circle. So if you draw out that tangent interact with here, so now you see you will have this phi and phi angle to be similar. Why? Because you know this is 90, this is also 90. Now this phi, if you draw like this, it will be phi here. If this is phi, this will also be phi. Okay. If this is phi, this also becomes phi. So, if you write out the expression, the radius of curvature is defined by this expression, h is equal to 1 by r c. This r c, if you want to find out, this is reciprocal of this is defined as the radius of curvature. So, now suppose if I want to derive this, what you have is let a b be the coordinates of the center of tangent circle at P. So, this is the coordinate of tangent. Now, what happens is you write out the equation of the circle, okay, x minus a square, z minus b square. This I think you have studied in coordinate geometry. So, you can write out the expression of the circle. If phi be the angle, this phi is the angle which is normal to the curve and the z axis. So, obviously, I can write tan phi is minus dz by dx, because no, this dz, this phi, if it is something like this, so tan of phi will be nothing but minus dz, an elemental portion dz, an elemental portion in x. It is negative because it is in this direction. So, if you write 90 minus phi, it becomes tan of minus dz by dx. Now, you differentiate equation 1, you differentiate this equation first with respect to x, you will get this term. Okay. Now, what you do is here you have dz by dz, you put this tan phi here, and then you also write down what is cos phi. So, if this tan phi you know, cos phi will be nothing but z minus b by r c, okay, z minus b by r c, fine. So, with this, if you differentiate this also, you get this expression. So, you should keep in mind one of the expression is tan phi, another is this expression, you then write cos phi and then again differentiate it and you become 1 by r c. So, now cos phi I can also write out this by this expression, because you write out the expression how the cos is related to tan. So, from there this expression holds by definition. So, tan phi it is nothing but dz by dx. If you go to the previous slide, tan phi is dz by dx. Since it is minus, it becomes positive. Now, again you do a derivative of this d cos phi with respect to dz now. Now, if you do this, it will be cos of phi. Now, this cos of phi you can take it from the previous expression d cos phi, sorry. So, this expression you continue. So, you d dz of cos phi you write from here this expression. So, it means that you get dz by dx, you take d dx outside, okay. So, if you do that, you take it outside, you get dz by dx minus 1, d dx are 1 plus dz dx whole square. So, d cos phi by dz then takes the form dz by dx inverse, then what you do is it is d2z by dx square. Simplify it further, you get this expression. Finally, this expression I can relate, this one I can relate as 1 by r c. So, it means that 1 by r c, or the radius of curvature, which is h, is nothing but d2z by dx square 1 plus dz by dx whole square. So, if you know the slope, you find out dz by dx and then you do a double derivative, you put it on top. The positive and negative sign may be assigned based on whether the particular surface, the radius is negative or positive. It is negative, it becomes I mean it is like a you give a sign to it, whether if it is concave it becomes negative sign, convex it becomes positive sign. So, this is the expression for radius of curvature. Another way of defining radius of curvature is that you assume this is a y axis and this is the x axis. So, this is rho is the radius at the particular, you may have different radius at different points. So, here the circle is here inside towards the x axis, while this is away from the x axis. If you have a curve which is given by y is equal to fx, you can write down the surface, the arc length or the arc area swept by an angle d theta. Let us say this is the angle d theta, it has swept this d theta, or this is d theta. So, the total area it has swept, let us say it is ds, here also it is ds. So, total area it has swept into the radius, we will give the approximate area. Or if I want to put in terms of dx and dy, so it is something like this. I mean, if I want to write it correctly, if you write it is something a triangle, you know, you can assume it the total surface area to be a triangle which has this ds is nothing but this dx and dy. So, you get dx square is equal to dx square plus dy square, you get from this expression ds. Now, tan theta also I can write as dy by dx. So, from 1 what you do in place of ds, you write 1 plus you take dx square as common. So, you take it outside, dx comes out 1 plus dy by dx whole square. Or from 2 you can write again you take d by dx, this one d dx of tan theta is equal to d of dy dx by dx. Okay. So, now this is what you have, this is the radius here rho, this is the angle it swept. So, if this is theta, this is also theta, and if this is theta, this is also theta. So, that is why you can write m is equal to dy by dx. So, from this expression pay attention to this expression. So, if you see I have inserted this expression 1 plus tan square theta d theta dx is equal to d2y by dx square. So, and I write this d theta, I keep it in the left hand side, take out everything on the right hand side. So, it will be d2y by dx square into dx by 1 plus dy dx. Okay. Now, you simplify this further because you know from the first expression this rho is nothing by ds d theta, from here this rho is ds by d theta. Okay. Ds expression you know from this earlier, and d theta you insert this expression, d theta you take out from this expression, and ds you know from the earlier expression it is nothing but 1 plus dy by dx whole square. Okay. So, that you have inserted here. Now, you simplify this because this entire term, this is this term you can take up. So, this is 2 and this is 1. So, you know it becomes 3 by 2 because there is already a square root. So, half plus 2. So, it becomes 3 by 2. So, this is the expression now for curvature, radius of curvature 1 by RC, which is also equal to h. So, this h and this h look similar, not much difference. Only thing is you know this is RC and this is 1 by RC. So, you have a similar expression derived from both the approaches. So, after we have derived this now you need to find out the Young Laplace equation. So, as I told you the overall you know the bubble, in the bubble you have a particular pressure inside it. So, that pressure is governed obviously by the surface tension force, and surface tension what is it? We know that it is how much of energy I require to increase the surface by a unit area. So, it is actually a difference in pressure across the curved surface due to surface tension. The pressure is greater on the concave side, the work needed to increase interfacial tension is given by, suppose I need to increase the work. When I tell I need to increase the work, what do you mean by that? It means if I want to give a certain amount of work, I want to increase the area by this much. So, the total work done will be nothing but the product of the surface tension by the total change in area. So, let me see if I doing all correctly. So, it is Newton per meter into meter square, it becomes Newton meter, which is joule. So, now you suppose consider a sphere or a surface, you know you have two radius of curvature, one is this, another is this. So, two radius of curvature. Okay. Now, suppose you have a balloon, right, a balloon, let us say this surface. Now, you expand it when you insert pressure. So, the surface is increasing. So, this surface it is increasing. So, it means that if I want to draw out this surface somehow comes like this. So, suppose this is that surface which is increasing its area. So, if I want to define a sphere, you should define it with two radius, one is r1 and this is r2, and let us suppose this is x and this is y. Now, I increase it to an arbitral units where the area increases in this direction as dz. So, the new lengths become x plus dx and y plus dy. So, it means I have increased the area from x into y to x plus dx into y plus dy. So, the change in area is the product of these two minus product of x y. Okay. So, I have done some work. Now, let us see, can we quantify this? So, if you see what is the change in area, just now I told initially this was the area, sorry, this was the x y was the area, now it is this area, fine. Now, in this term I can cancel out these two terms, and these are second order terms dx dy, I can just neglect this. So, I can neglect out this term. So, what you have is this. So, it is x dy plus y dx. Okay. So, this term you should remember. So, this is the net change in area. So, now you see I just change the area. So, the total work done is just the net change of area into the surface tension. So, this is the expression. Now, but still we are not anywhere close to the solution. What do we do with this dy dx? Because the work done, as you know, is balanced by the pressure change across the surface. So, whatever work done I am doing for increasing its surface, it is nothing but the, so you have force, pressure is equal to force per unit area. So, P into A. So, delta P delta A. So, delta P into delta A. So, delta A is there, and if you multiply with the displacement. So, this is the displacement. So, this entire thing is the force. So, force into displacement becomes the work done. So, net change in area into the force applied is called the work done. We have this expression, but the only issue is this expression is equivalent to this expression, but the only issue is what do we do with this dy and dx. Let us see. Now, see at this point, if you see, I can say that this angle, it has swept, this particular is directly proportional to the particular value of this arc, this. Same way I can also say that it is proportional, this one, this arc length is proportional to this arc length, because it is sweeping the same angle. This arc length is proportional to this arc length, because it is sweeping the same angle theta. So, I can say theta is nothing but the total arc length divided by the radius. So, it means these two triangles are similar in nature. So, it means I can compare these values, the x plus dx, this with respect to, this is the arc length S, I can compare this ratio with respect to r, that is r1. So, if I want to compare x by r1, so x upon r1 is equal to x plus dx by r1 plus dz. Okay. So, please keep in mind that these arc lengths are proportional, these arc lengths are proportional. So, if I want to write from this expression, so x plus dx upon r1 plus dz is x plus r1. This you should understand. If you understand this, then you can do or go ahead. So, now what I do is I keep dx here and take out everything to the right hand side, here it is. So, and now you simplify this, these two terms actually cancels out, because r1 cancels out, x cancels out. So, what you have is nothing but this term x dz by r1. Same way I can also write y plus dy by r2 by dz is equal to y by r2. So, y by r2 means this y upon r2 is same as r2 plus dz upon y plus dy. Same thing I have written, again I have reached a same expression. So, this should be positive in nature, because it is positive. Okay. So, that is why there is no negative sign. Same way you will get dx and dy. Now, what you do, I have now equated this gamma dA into delta p x y dz, and I have written this expression gamma is equal to x dy plus y dx. dA I have written as x dy plus y dx, delta p x y dx. Okay. Now, if I simplify this, you get this expression you put dy and dx from the previous expression, this one and dx, and do some simplification. So, x y dz is common from everywhere. So, what you have is ultimately delta p is equal to gamma 1 by r1 plus 1 by r2. This is the Young-Laplace equation. So, what that means is that for a spherical drop, if suppose you have a spherical drop, so both the r1 and r2 is same, which is equal to r. So, if I write down the expression, it will be delta p is equal to gamma of 1 by r plus 1 by r. So, for a spherical drop, r1 equal to r2, it will be 2 gamma by r, okay, 2 gamma by r, sorry, this should not pay attention to this. So, 2 gamma by r. Now, for a cylindrical surface, if you know you have a cylindrical type of surface, something like this, where you have only one, this line is, it is infinite radius, while r1 is nothing but the radius of the cylinder. So, if you put r1 as cylinder, so in this expression delta p equal to 1 by r plus 1 by infinity. So, this becomes 0. So, you have nothing but gamma into r of cylinder, this is for the cylindrical. Now, what about the planar surface? Planar surface, obviously all r1 r2 is infinity. So, it means that there is no change in. So, that is true, because on a planar surface on a liquid, so if it is a plain flat liquid, there is no pressure difference across the. So, it means that if you see that lower this radius, so lower the radius, smaller the radius gives you higher pressure difference, so more unstable the system is. So, now let us see two of such problems where we deal with this. Now, the first question is, you calculate the pressure inside a 1 micrometer diameter droplet of water in air at 293 Kelvin and 1 atmospheric pressure. Okay. So, what you do is that you write out the different values of this is water. So, I am not writing out the water, it will be surface tension you know for air and water, which is 72.8 minus 3 Newton per meter, okay, at this particular temperature at 293 Kelvin. Fine. Now, the radius is given is 1 micrometer. So, you convert it to meter. So, this is diameter given. So, maybe okay. So, diameter. So, you have the radius is equal to 0.5 into 10 to the power of minus 6. Okay. So, you got the gamma, you got diameter. Now, you put up all these values, because delta p we know is 2 gamma upon r in case of sphere. Now, let us see what is the pressure applied, 2 into 72.8 to 10 to the power of minus 3 Newton per meter by the radius 0.5 into 10 to the power of minus 6. So, if you simplify is, the delta p comes out to be 291.2 into 10 to the power of 3, because this is meter pascals. Because there is Newton per meter, this is meter. So, it will be Newton per meter square, which is pascals. Now, this is pascals, I can convert it into kilopascal, it is 291.2 kilopascals. Now, this is the pressure difference. Now, our question is, what is the pressure inside? So, it means this particular pressure difference is also able to withstand the atmospheric pressure. So, what is the pressure inside is the atmospheric pressure plus this pressure difference. So, total pressure difference will be inside the droplet will be total pressure P 291.2 kilopascal plus, because at standard atmospheric pressure is 101.3 kilopascal. So, this will be the total 392.5. So, this is the total kilopascal. So, you should keep this in mind, okay. So, you have a pretty high pressure inside the bubble. So, you see as you go to a lower and lower diameter, if you go to a nanometer diameter, this pressure difference will be extremely high, okay. So, this is one application where we can visualize. Now, in this question, the second question, calculate the pressure inside the air bubbles having 1, 10, 100 nanometer. Now, and comment on your result. So, if I want to do so, like what is the 10 nanometer, 100 nanometer, all this. So, I use the same expression. Let us say for 1 nanometer, it is 1 point. Now, it is given in radii. So, I can directly write meters. So, if this is 1, so delta P here takes the form, this is all for water. So, you can use the similar expression earlier, 2 into 72.8 into 10 to the power of minus 3. This is the surface tension of water divided by 1 into 10 to the power of minus 9. So, it is close to 146, delta P is close to 146.5 megapascal. So, it is very high, very high. Now, same way if you do it for r equal to 10 nanometer, 10 into 10 to the power minus 9 meter, everything remains the same. So, you will get delta P as 14 point. And when you have r equal to 10 into 10 to the power of 100, delta P is 1.465 megapascal. See how the pressure, remember these are all pressure difference, these are not absolute pressure. For absolute pressure you add the atmospheric pressure to it. So, see such high difference, so much it depends on the radius, okay. So, R depends. So, it means as you go to a lower and lower diameter, you get higher and higher pressure. So, these are very, very unstable, very unstable as compared to the others. Then the next question is the one which is we are comparing two small bubbles. Now, you calculate two small bubbles, one is having 10 micrometer diameter, other having 100 meter diameter. They are connected by a capillary. Can you predict which bubble will collapse? Give reasons behind your prediction. And we are also asked to calculate the pressure if the pressure difference the surface tension is 30 millinewton. So, let us write down the radius. So, first R1 I can write 10 micrometer. So, I divide by 2. So, it becomes 5 into 10 to the power of minus 6 meters, okay. And R2 is equal to 50 into 10 to the power of minus 6 meters. Obviously, the bubble with the pressure in bubble 1 will always be greater because of a smaller diameter. The small bubble will collapse while the larger bubble will obviously it will expand. So, what is the difference? Now, the difference in pressure is nothing but you compute delta P is nothing but 1 by R1 minus 1 by R2, because the pressure difference for R1 is 2 gamma R1, pressure difference for R2 is 2 gamma by R2. So, just subtract these two, you will get this expression. Now, you know it is for water. So, sorry, not water, it is having a surface tension of 30 millinewton, 2 into 30 into 10 to the power of minus 3 meter. Then you put out the values 1 upon 5 into 10 to the power of minus 6, 1 upon 50 into 10 to the power of minus 6. You solve this, you will get close to 10800 pascals, which is equivalent to 10.8 kilopascals. So, this is the pressure difference. So, obviously, the pressure difference between these two bubbles is this much. So, the one which is a higher bubble diameter will actually expand, this R2 will expand as compared to R1. So, I hope this current lecture has given you an enough indication of what are the things to come, because we have covered this actually the surface, how does the surface, what is the pressure inside a bubble, and we also seen how to calculate the radius of curvature. In the next lecture, what we will do is that we will study the Kelvin equation. The Kelvin equation you must be knowing, it has significance in BET absorption, phase absorption. So, we will now take it up in details. Okay? Thank you.